Is this one of the reasons why you're taking a pause from business at the moment? Is to kind of take a step away from that subjective view where you're in it to then, take a bird's eye view, an objective view, and have a look at exactly what's happening in your entire life, because you have been quite successful at business, but I'm also assuming that that's, put stress on you in terms of relationships and, other areas of life. Maybe your health has taken a little bit of a hit and stress levels are really high, sleep has taken a hit, etc., which then obviously has a flow-on effect to, energy levels and your productivity and your hormones and libido, everything, man.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
Man, I've had everything you mentioned and more. So, yeah, there's sort of like little chronological points that I can sort of recall where you can almost look at yourself from an outsider's perspective and think, this guy's got it all. And then internally it's like, why do I feel so bad?
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember a particular situation. Do you want some examples of this? Or?
For sure, man. For sure.
So one situation was late 2015. So I was going to Vietnam to buy this property, and with HSBC in Hong Kong, there's like these different levels of the bank. You kind of got the standard bank, and then sort of you got a bit more money. There's like this level bank, and then, and so. When I first arrived in Hong Kong in 2012, I was like, wow, this sort of strata banking system is like, one day I'm going to be in the rich person's bank.
Was that ever a driver?
No, it was the monetary thing isn't a driver. It was just like, it was more of an achievement of, and so I was going to Vietnam. I was getting a bunch of cash just for a deposit on this place in Hong Kong. Whilst I was there, they're like, oh, sir, you actually qualify for, HSBC Premier. I was like, yes. Here I am, I'm flying to Vietnam to buy my first property. So I'm really happy that I'm buying my first property. I'm in the rich person's bank, and it was this auction. It was this very sort of exclusive sort of development, and like 100-something properties. I wanted one of them, and I managed to sort of pull the right lottery number out to have my option on the right place. And I got the place I wanted. I remember sitting at this hotel that night, and like I just had a couple of things with financially and sort of business wise and personally, which I was really happy about at that time. That the sort of the pain and sacrifice had been sort of worth it. I remember sitting there at this hotel, like wanting to call someone to like, hey man, got this fucking amazing penthouse, and I literally couldn't think of anyone that I felt comfortable enough calling, where I was like, man, I've just ostracized everyone. There's just been one focus in my life, which is business. And now that I've actually been able to use that vehicle to have a little personal win, I'm like, I can't even share this with anyone.
It's no good having something if you can't share it with someone, man. Yeah, dude, that is fucking powerful, man. That is powerful. And I'm sure there's people listening that can relate to that as well. Because something I always talk about is like the seasons of life, right? Like, there's going to be times where we need to put our head down and focus on business to make sure that we get ourselves to a financially stable position so we can deal with a pandemic, for example, or take the holidays that we want to throughout the year, or I used to go traveling for 3 to 4 months every year, but the 8 or 9 months that I was living in Tasmania running my own PT business was just making enough money so then I could go and spend that over 3 to 4 months without dipping into my savings, right? So, I was making enough money to be able to live the life that I wanted, and I was totally cool with that. But there's going to be times where, you need to get to a certain bank account level where you're, paying off your bills and you're in a position where you don't have to stress about money. But then once you get to that point, most people live on this hedonic adaptation, this hedonic treadmill, where they adapt to having X amount of money, and then they think, oh, well, when I get to the next level, then I'll be happier. When I get to the next level, I'll be happier. When I have this car, I'll be happier. When I get a bigger house, I'll be happier. But the thing is, like, you adapt to that, and that becomes your new normal. And then the thing that makes you happy again is getting to the next level, And all you're doing when you're on that hedonic treadmill is you're cutting away, and as you said, ostracize yourself from and your friends, and you're segregating yourself from all of your friends, and like those relationships start falling apart, man. And when you get to a place where you're happy, you've got no one to share it with now. So something I always talk about is like sometimes business needs to be the number one priority, but it can't be like that forever. Sometimes relationships need to be the number one priority. Sometimes training needs to be number one priority. Nutrition, health, etc., etc. Sleep. So tying back into the very first question, personal growth has been a big focus for you recently. Has there been a time in the past where, you know, maybe one of those pillars have slipped, or something else has been more of a priority, like your fitness might have been more a priority, or your sleep might have been more of a priority, or there was a time in your life where, you know, you got kicked in the teeth and you're like, oh man, my sleep hasn't been enough of a priority. I need to now make this my number one value.
Yeah. Pretty much all of those were sacrificed for the better part of the last decade plus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I moved to Hong Kong, I'd been sort of relatively successful in Australia, and I've always been entrepreneurial, so I've had businesses in other industries and so on. And I was running pretty hot. I remember the message from pretty much everyone in Australia was like, hey, when you get to Hong Kong, just you know, cool the jets a little bit. I did the complete opposite.
Because you were on a roll, man.
Yeah.
You had momentum, you were on fire, and you wanted to continue with that, right?
Yeah. And just the challenge is my personality. I'm not a offensively aggressive personality. I'm a counterpuncher, and so I need to put myself into situations. And so being successful in Australia, leaving everything behind, moving to Hong Kong where I don't know anyone, with some suitcases and some sort of half fleshed out ideas, and I turned 30 when I landed there, and to you know, have your back against the wall. I mean, Hong Kong is not, it's like New York. It's like you don't go there to, you know, for an easy sort of way of life.
Yeah.
So I've put myself into plenty of situations, and I've realised that from a business point of view, and maybe in other areas of life as well, I've experienced the most growth by putting myself into the hottest furnace. You know, when I first got into strength training, the first thing I did was go up to the biggest, baddest dudes and go, hey, you know, if you see me doing something wrong, just give me a clip over the ears and tell me. Before you know it, you're training with, you know, the biggest, baddest dudes. So I've had a pretty fast learning curve by being willing to subject myself to those difficult situations. But I think at some point that went from being a growth process that I was comfortable with to an identity, where it turned into I'm only going to look at business opportunities which are the most risky, less chance of working out, require the most pain and sacrifice, and so, you know, in sort of MMA terms, if you approach business like Vanderlei Silva used to approach fighting, just because you want to have a slugfest, then you're going to end up looking and talking like Vanderlei Silva. And so,
great analogy.
I realised that I was maybe unconsciously picking the hardest fights, because an easy binary process. I've left plenty of money on the table, plenty of business opportunities, simply because it didn't ignite anything like some form of intrinsic challenge within me. But realising that when your back is against the wall, and there's no way that anyone can make an analogy as serious as what you've seen, but when your back's against the wall in a business situation, then yeah, your happiness and your relationships and your own health has to take a back seat.